All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Believe in Sabres, sort of the season wrap-up edition. I am Adam Benini of WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo. Sal Majorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. We got Paul Hamilton with us again, colleague of mine on Sports Talk Live, our Sabres insider, and you, of course, hear him on the call all year long with WGR Sports Radio 550. Paul, how you doing today? Have you recovered yet? It's been a hectic stretch for all of you guys on that beat.
It is funny how your body all of a sudden realizes it's over. Like I did 6 radio hits yesterday, and I fell asleep after every one of them. My body.
Yeah, I know the feeling, Paul. You and I are pretty close in age, so yeah, I need my afternoon nap too sometimes.
But during the run, I was fine. It was just like your body realizes it's over, and well, it's time to shut down.
You know what that's called? That's adrenaline.
Adrenaline, man.
All right.
We were talking about this. We were talking about this the other day. The hockey playoffs are so different than the football playoffs. I mean, the football, you get 1 3-hour game a week, and then it's all a bunch of BS in between. Hockey, you just never stop. You go game to game to game. Even the off day, you're busy doing stuff. So it's just the hockey playoffs are so different and so much more draining, not only on the players and coaches, but people will laugh, but on the media, it's a grind to cover a playoff run, man.
No, it is. You're on a train to Montreal, then you're in Buffalo the next day, and then you're back on a train to Montreal the day after, and it's just like, okay, let's do it.
Not only that, but from like morning skate, right? You're at the morning skate. On the TV side of things, as soon as the morning skate's in, you've got like 4 or 5 live shots that you've got to get together, right? Mm-hmm. So you're editing pretty much all day. You're either on the road or you come back from the arena if you're at home and go to the station, then get back down there and deal with traffic and logistics and setup and all of those things. Then by the time the game starts, for me anyway, and John Scott, who has taken my place at Channel 2, would probably tell you the same thing. You're sort of, it's a relief when the game actually starts. And then you cycle up through the post game and everything. And if there's overtime, as there is, that condenses it. So, yeah, and then you're traveling in between. So, to Sal's point, it is a very different grind than even postseason football. So, having said all that, it's a little bit inside what we all do and have done for so long. Let's get to the hockey itself. Paul, what's your take? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do remember Dallas when it was 97 degrees. And, of course, TV people wear makeup, and the makeup's running down all your faces as you're out there trying to do your live shots in sun and 97 degrees.
Remember those air conditioning units they had, or dehumidifiers outside the arena? Those things were massive. I remember I was taking a walk one day around the arena. I was like, what the hell are those? And I was told, yeah, that's how we're keeping the arena from the ice melting. It was crazy.
Dallas 99, the old Reunion Arena. I remember walking after the morning skate from the arena to our satellite truck, which was just out in the parking lot outside. And I was drenched by the time I got to the sat truck. Yeah, and it's just unbelievable that, all this nuanced stuff that all of us go through, especially at this time of the year, that makes it different. But now that it is over, Paul, what's your take on what we witnessed from this team this year? Let's start wide and then kind of zoom in as we look toward the offseason.
Well, somebody we both know, or all three of us know, actually, the late John Muckler once said to me that the playoffs are a process almost every time. Not like the St. Louis Blues weren't a process, but for the most part, it's a process. Look at Tampa Bay. They got swept by Columbus their first year. They realized they had to make a few adjustments. Then they win 2 Stanley Cups. Florida lost their first year. They made some adjustments. You can go back to the old Oilers and the old Islanders. It was a process for them. And this is a process that's going to be very good for the Buffalo Sabres, because next time, which they're hoping is next year, they will know what to expect. A lot of these things aren't going to take them by surprise. If they happen to be in Montreal, they know what they're up against. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy place, atmosphere. And it's not going to take them by surprise. All the things that are like first-time things that they were experienced, now they have it in their back pocket, and they'll be better for it next time they do it.
or Paul, Adam and I have kind of come to an agreement on this, and I think you're probably going to join us as a threesome here, but Buffalo was the better team in this series. I just believe that, especially in the last two games. I thought the Sabres were the better team. They should have won the game, and it's kind of disgusting that they're not in Carolina beating the hell out of the Hurricanes, because you know damn well Buffalo would have beat the Hurricanes too, the same way, I think, but they're not there. It's hockey, and it's frustrating, but would you agree that Buffalo at the end of that series was trending in the right direction?
Definitely in the last two games. And I was glad to hear both Kekalainen and Ruff say it never should have come down to that. They shouldn't have been playing in an overtime for a one goal wins the game. So they're not blaming the one goal. They're not blaming, is it a soft goal? Is it not? They're not blaming the quick whistle and all that. They're basically blaming themselves for losing 3 home games after they won the first one, especially game 5, where they scored 3 goals in the first period. And then early in the second period, Tage Thompson has a breakaway, pulls a move he's made a million times before, usually scores on it because he's very good at popping the puck up and over the goaltender. He couldn't get it up and over the goaltender. And instead of it being 4-2 and the fans blowing the roof off the place again, it's still 3-2. And I think Anderson scored pretty quick after that, maybe a minute or two after that, to tie the game. If he makes it 4-2, how does that change things? I mean, the fans are back into it. They have the adrenaline push. Now Montreal maybe has to come out of their system and be uncomfortable the way they're playing. So those are the things that the Sabres look at, that they should have probably won that game. And if you win that game, you're not playing in overtime in a game 7 where one shot beats you.
Yeah, it's a lot accumulates. And at times I thought Montreal was the better team earlier in the series. But as the series went on, which is often how you gauge these things, and the grind continues and teams adjust, I agree with Sal that Buffalo was clearly better. Certainly in portions of game 5, definitely in game 6, as we saw, and for the vast majority of game number 7. So there's a lot of what could have been.
Even in overtime, you look at the overtime where Tage Thompson comes down on a 2-on-1. Ruff said behind the bench, he goes, this is done. He looked at who he had coming down on a 2-on-1. He thought for sure they were going to win the game there. And Tage decided to do that toe drag. He lost the puck, got it back, but he was right on top of Dobish when he got it back and couldn't do anything with it. Just shoot it from the circle. I mean, you're Tage Thompson. Yeah. You have the hardest shot in the NHL. Nobody else has ever shot it a puck as hard as you have in the NHL. You have scored from that circle many, many times. Rip it. I mean, I just don't get cute with it. Rip it. And that was their opportunity in overtime to win it right there.
You can talk about
Paul. I thought that was a case a lot of these games, right? The Sabres just seem, you keep it simple. Get pucks to the net, get rebounds, the dirty, greasy goals. And I just think there were too many times that they just tried to be too pretty. They tried to be too perfect. And that was a clear opportunity right there. Like you said, don't toe drag that, shoot it. I thought we saw that a lot in this series. And it's probably the difference in the end. When you look at what happened, it's probably the difference why they didn't win.
And if Dobish makes the save, who's the other guy on the 2-on-1? The guy who will win the battle for the rebound. Benson. He will win any battle around the net if the save is made.
Right. And I think about, too, Darlene at the blue line there, the indecision. It's little things like that led to what looked like a relatively innocent odd man break the other way from Montreal. But it's those types of situations where any indecision or hesitancy or whatever on his part, it leads to that turnover and then ultimately to the game-winning goal. So let's look forward now. And Paul, high on the list of things to do this offseason would be Alex Tuch. What's your sense of where things stand on a new contract for him?
The Tuch situation, I'll tell you what, I listened to what he said, and it felt like he's halfway out the door. I think we got Paul back. I don't know. Yep. My read on Tuch, listening to his presser the other day, was he's kind of got half a foot out the door. What do you think?
Yeah, he said it's going to be a family decision. And, those talks, of course, will be private and should be private. And, his wife lives in the Northwest. They spend their summers there. So who knows if she wants to move? If she doesn't want to move, we don't know, nor do we need to know. I mean, those are the decisions that the Tucks will have to make themselves. Will they come down? I mean, the way Kekalainen said it, he said it very carefully, that we need a contract that helps the Buffalo Sabres be better. And what I took that to mean is they need a contract where they don't have to get rid of players. If he gets 10, 11 million, they got to get rid of some people because
Right.
they'll be over the cap. And they want to sign Benson long term. So that's what I took his comment to mean, that we need a contract that will allow us to keep our players and not have to be, cutting players or trading players or doing those types of things. That's the way I took that comment.
The term is the other issue with him, right? We've heard upwards of 8 years on some comparables for a player, of his age, right? 30 years old. And what is this series, his performance or lack thereof in the series against Montreal? What's the impact on all of it? So can you speak to maybe both those issues?
I don't think that series should have a huge effect. He was great in the last two games. He just couldn't put the puck in the net. He was Alex Tuck in those last two games. He did everything but score. In the Boston series, he did a lot of scoring, had 7 points in 6 games. In the recent history, he's had 2 36-goal seasons and a 33-goal season. That is tough to try to. Plus, in one of those seasons, he led the league in shorthanded goals, and in the other, his partner McLeod was very close to the top in shorthanded goals, and they played together. So he's an excellent penalty killer and can add offense to your penalty kill. So it would be a tough way, but that's interesting too. What's the hang up here? Is it years? Is the Sabres are thinking, at 30 years old, I don't know if we want to put 8 years on the board. How about 4? We'll give you the money, but how about 4? So
Right.
Is it the years or is it the money where the hang up is here?
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. I don't know if they've got so much youth, Paul. You look at it, they've got depth in their forward lines, and you have to. I guess the question I'll ask you is, when you're going to weigh what they're going to do with this roster, can they afford to move on from a player with that much experience, do all the things that he does well, the leadership, everything that he puts into it? Can they afford to move on from that player given some of the really interesting youth they have coming up?
And they have youngsters that they need to find spots for. They're not going back to Rochester, Ostland, and Hellenus. And
Right.
I'm as guilty as anybody else is here. You notice I didn't forget, but I said it didn't say it on purpose. But other times I forget about Yuri Kulik, who has a lethal shot. I mean, he's had the 1 year in the NHL, and by the end of that year, he was improving by leaps and bounds. And he's another one. He was drafted in the same draft as Ostland. So here's another one that has told us that he went to the Mayo Clinic to have surgery because it just wasn't dissolving the blood clot. So the blood clot was taken out. It's gone. So he didn't know if he'd ever play hockey again, but now he knows that he's going to be able to come back. So there's another good young player that they're going to have to find a space for.
Is there a guy like, for instance, Carrick has another year remaining. Now, I know he's not the same player as Alex Tuck specifically on offense, but is that the kind of guy that maybe you can lean on now if Tuck does go away? That's a veteran guy that you didn't have for most of the year. Can he be the guy who steps up at least as a veteran leader to replace Tuck?
Sure he can. And I asked Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen this, and he gave it some thought. I go, now that you're a starting goaltender in the NHL, do you feel you need to be a leader in that room? I mean, he's past 25, and he said, yeah. He goes, I have to keep telling myself I'm not a young player anymore. He goes, I still think that. But he goes, I got to realize I'm 26 years old. And now he said, I'm not the guy who's going to stand up and start yelling and screaming and that type of thing. But he said, yes, as a starting goaltender, you do have to be a leader in the room. And that's something that was kind of new for him, but something that he needs to do. Zucker is a very good leader. He's good with Kulik. He's good with Benson. He keeps things light. They can lean on him, but he has 1 year left on his contract. He's not going to be around forever. And there are going to have to be other guys that step up into that. I think Zach Benson, as he gets older, not now, but I think will turn into an excellent leader. As he gets older, he seems to kind of get it. He's too young now, and everybody's kind of busting his chops. So he's not ready to take on that role right now. But Dome, there's a perfect example of a young player. His dad was just a great leader in the NHL, and just from everything I've seen from him, maybe he's the guy that is almost ready to step into a role like that, because he's very mature when you're talking to him. When after a game, he doesn't make excuses, but he tells you what happened in the game, where you shake your head and go, "Yep, that's what I saw." So that might be a guy right there that if you lose Tuck, might be the guy that might have to take his place in the leadership category.
Looking at some of the other priorities this offseason, Beck Malenstein, another unrestricted free agent of significance. On the RFA front, Zach Benson tops that list, right? They're going to be trying to get a long-term deal done with him. Krebs, Kesserling, and Bowen Byram, I guess, is eligible for an extension as of July 1, Paul. Is Benson the priority as we move on from Tuck? Is Benson the priority to get done there? And where do all those other pieces fall? What's your sense after hearing from Kekalainen in the end-of-season news conference?
Well, Kekalainen said they're looking to lock up Benson, definitely. Now, if Tuck comes back, you might not be able to lock him up this year. You may have to wait till next year. He might be okay with that, because he might even be worth more money if you give him another year. Let's say it's a 1-year deal just to get them through this salary, because they'll be through the salary cap pain just after one season. They'll be fine the next year. But he might say, yeah, okay, I'll do that because I'll bet on myself and I'll probably make more money next year if we do the long-term deal.
Yeah.
He may not want to sign a 7-8 year deal. Look what happened to Thompson. Thompson's contract is an absolute bargain right now because he signed it maybe too early in his career. And now he's locked into it. There's no renegotiation in the National Hockey League. So, Benson might be okay with that. He may only want to sign a 2 or 3 year deal anyway, just to say, okay, let's do this again in a couple of years. After I've had a couple more years where everybody loves him. And, I was sitting in Montreal having dinner with a bunch of Canadiens fans sitting there. And I said, well, who's your favorite Sabre? And they're like, oh, we want Benson. Every single one of them wants Benson on their team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Geez. What about Byram? He's really interesting. I think he's a terrific player. He finishes off your top four. They've got a really solid top 4 D with him in the lineup. What do you think about that situation?
And Kekalainen has said a couple of times that he believes in the back out. That's how you build a team. And he feels in those 4, they have maybe the best top 4 defense in the National Hockey League. He is looking very much to locking up Byram to a long-term deal. And so that is going to be a priority too. It doesn't have to be done this year. It can be done starting on July 1st, kind of like what Tuck had last year when we hit July 1st. So, it'll be open to it. Anything he signs will not be on next year's salary cap. He still will be under this last year of his contract on that. So you don't have to worry about that. But he definitely wants to get those 4 locked up. Kesselring, I asked him about, I says, does he still want to be part of this? Because he was mad. He was upset with the way things went. He goes, what he would say is, I don't agree with what they're doing. He felt he should be playing, but he went through 3 bad injuries and it really derailed his season. And he came here thinking he was going to be a top 4 defenseman, and they thought he was going to be. And then Samuelsson was their best defenseman for a lot of the year. So that's not happening anymore. So he, as Kekalainen said, he goes, I've had conversations with him, not only just now, but during the season, that he has to embrace that 5-6 role now. Maybe he thought he was going to be a top 4D, but he has to embrace that 5-6 role. He goes, and I love the fact that he wants more. He goes, every player should want more. But is Kesselring okay with that? And he didn't answer my question there. He told me about the conversations and everything. But when my question was, does he still want to be a part of this? He did not answer that question. And Kesselring was one of the few Sabres not made available during all the exit interviews there.
All right. So you talked about the philosophy of Kekalainen building things from the back out. That brings us to goaltending. It obviously, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, you have Lyon, And then what's the situation with Devin Levi and Rochester, right? How does that all fit? How does that all play out? And I suppose it begins with the question, Paul, are you convinced that Luukkonen is the answer, right? Contractually, they've acted as if he's the answer, but there were some inconsistencies this postseason, that sort of a thing. Where do you stand on that, on Luukkonen in particular, and then on the goaltending position, how they're stacked in the organization in general?
Well, I can't ignore the regular season where he and Lyon from December 9th were just phenomenal. For most of that time, Luukkonen led the NHL in save percentage. Their records are phenomenal. I think one might have been 18-4 and the other might have been 17-5 or something like that. It was just crazy numbers that they put up. And there were inconsistencies in Luukkonen, but I'll tell you what, when they needed to win a hockey game in Montreal, in both games 4 and game 6, look at the guy who came through with flying colors. Luukkonen was the number one star of game 4. They lose that game. They're behind 3-1. Now they go home tied 2-2 and are back into the series as he played a phenomenal game. Then he comes to Buffalo and plays, and it didn't go too well, but the Sabres didn't play near as well in front of him as they did in Montreal, or they did throughout the season. And it was a horrible game by both sides. And then you get to, game 7 after Luukkonen comes in for Lyon, who had his problems in Montreal. And even though Buffalo's playing well, Lyon lets 3 goals on 4 shots in, and they're behind. Luukkonen comes in, plays just over 51 minutes, and pitches an 18-save shutout. Now, the Sabres played very well in front of him there, but he made the saves that needed to be made, and it got them a win that they had to have to get a game 7. He was fine in game 7. Some people think that was a bad goal. To me, as I saw that slow motion, the puck moved. And when it moved, I thought Evans must have hit that, but he didn't. And then Newhook, he discussed why it happened. He came down on the left wing side. He goes, as soon as he went to shoot the puck stood up. So he shot a puck that was sitting sideways on his stick. That now becomes a flutter puck. And that is why the puck dropped on him. You could see Luukkonen was on it, and he just shot, and it didn't stand up on end. He had it because it was coming right at him. And next thing you know, it took a right-hand turn and dipped down. Yeah. And in my opinion, I just thought, what do you expect him to do when he is set and ready to make a save in one place, and then the puck dips on him and goes to the right? A lot of people think he still should be able to make the save, and okay, that's fine. I just disagree with that. I just sit there and say to myself, how is he going to stop that when a puck dips like that? And it's just kind of bad luck that the puck stood up just when Newhook went to shoot it.
All right, so we're on kind of
anything else, Adam?
Yeah, we got a hard off time at 25 minutes here because Sal has some radio responsibilities. So let's get the sponsor read in here real quick. FanDuel, presenting sponsor for this show and others on the Believe Network, has the Carolina Hurricanes slight favorites at home against the Montreal Canadiens in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Carolina at -196, Montreal plus 162. Paul, quick, 15-second take. Sal and I had thought that the Carolina might be vulnerable given the amount of time off they had, and I think we saw that particularly in the first period. Montreal able to pounce on them the way they did. Do you see this series continuing in that fashion? And talk about a coulda, shoulda, woulda scenario for the Buffalo Sabres, trying to envision them, as Sal mentioned earlier in this show. What's your take on the Eastern Conference Final real quick here?
Well, Freddie Anderson wasn't Freddie Anderson, and the Hurricanes weren't the Hurricanes. A couple of times you saw Brind'Amour on camera saying, what is going on here? And It was just craziness. And but no, I don't expect that to continue. I think the Hurricanes will get their game back.
All right, so that's going to do it. Thanks for being with us.
Same with Colorado, too.
Yeah.
Right, same with Colorado, too. That was an unusual start for them as well, so... Yeah, should be great, though. Should be great. Great drama in the Stanley Cup playoffs, man. Love it.
So, Paul, we appreciate your time. Paul Hamilton, WGRZ Sabres Insider, Sports Radio, WGR 550 as well. Sal Majorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. I'm Adam Benini, WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live. Thanks for being with us. We're going to continue on with Believe in Sabres at some key moments during the course of the offseason, with the draft, of course, coming right up as well. So for Sal and Paul, I'm Adam. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Sabres, presented by FanDuel.